Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nora and I'm excited today because we're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. Basically, a lot of people do this tag in the middle of the year, kind of to do like a mid-year wrap-up of their reading and then to talk about their reading plans for the rest of the year. So I'm also going to do my hand at that too. I have quite a lot of books to talk about. I feel like my reading year has been pretty good. One of my biggest priorities for this year was to read more off of my physical TBR. Truly, I don't think I've done that well because I look at my shelves and I still see majority books that I haven't read yet that I would like to. So I'd like to do better at that for the remainder of the year. I just tend to read physical books very slowly. I also just have a very busy lifestyle, but I feel like I've been using that as an excuse lately, so I'm trying to get better about just not doing that. But anyways, without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it because I'm very excited to talk about the books I've read so far. So the first question is, what is your favorite book slash the best book of 2025 so far? And I have a couple options for this one. I feel like I have a couple options for every question on this list, but this one is actually my most recent read, which is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This was just such a good fantasy book. I'm not going to go on too much about it, but I was just so immersed in this world and the story. The writing was so atmospheric and I just really loved the characters. I feel like they were very whole and just everything in this story came together and like weaved itself together so well, in my opinion. And I just really think it is great writing and just a different type of fantasy. I feel like fantasies recently are just so focused on the romance, so for this to be solely focused on the fantasy with like a little bit of romance was just what I wanted. I have two other contenders for this list, which is Red Rising by Pierce Brown and Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I feel like these ones are definitely up my alley. This one is a sci-fi book and I kind of just dipped my toes into the genre this year and I really loved this one. And of course, Sunrise on the Reaping. I feel like this is on everyone's favorite book list this year because it's just so heartbreaking and so nostalgic. But I truly loved both of these books as well. I just think One Dark Window really takes the spot for absolute favorite so far. And then as for how many books I've read so far this year, I'm currently at 36 and I set my reading goal for 55, so I'm about 65% through. I feel like I'm doing really good. I feel like I'm ahead of schedule and I'm okay if I like surpass that goal. Like that's okay with me. But even if I don't hit the goal, I'm trying to start focusing more on the quality of the books I read over the quantity, because I'm realizing that I care more about the actual stories that I'm reading instead of how many I'm reading. The more books I read, the more I'm realizing that it's okay to DNF books if I'm not enjoying them, and it's okay to not love every single book, but I want to try to read ones that I'm going to love. I feel like I've had a lot of just 3-star reads or even 4-star reads, but I just feel like I haven't been super obsessed with a lot of books this year. They've just kind of been mid for me, and that's fine, but I'm just looking to find more books that I can rave about and that like just consume me and that I'm absolutely obsessed with. So I think that's going to be one of my biggest goals throughout the rest of this year. So the next question is, what is the best sequel that you've read this year? And honestly, I have not read that many sequels at all this year. I've been really bad about that. I've either been starting series or reading standalones. So I'm gonna have to say Sunrise on the Reaping, even though this is a prequel technically, but I still am gonna count it because it came out after the original series. So this one was definitely the best, and it also was the only one who fit the prompt. Next question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to, and I have so many on this list actually, but I'm gonna pick just like one or two that I'm really excited about. So the first one is Night Weaver by R.M. Gray. This is a young adult pirate fantasy romance, I believe, and I mainly bought this because the cover and just like this edition is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's just such a pretty book, so I was convinced to buy it because of that. But also, if anything has pirates, I'm 100% gonna read it, and I've been following the author on Instagram for a very long time, so I'd seen her talking about this book for a while and I was just really intrigued because she compared it a lot to Pirates of the Caribbean, and I love that movie series so much. It's so nostalgic for me, and I just feel like I will love this book, and it's just something that will make me think of when I was in high school or something, or just when I was younger in general and I was really into pirates and just really into young adult fantasy. I'm hoping it gives me that feeling. I just haven't got to it yet. And some other books on this list that I don't like physically own: Direbound by Sable Sorensen. I feel like this has been really popular lately in like book spaces online. It's been compared to Fourth Wing but with direwolves, and that just really intrigues me, but I'm also kind of really scared to read it because I'm trying not to listen to like popular book recommendations anymore, because most of the time when I listen to people's recommendations I'm very disappointed by them. But this one just sounds so good because the direwolves are just awesome and it reminds me of Game of Thrones, and I'm just curious. I just want to try it, even though I probably will be let down, but I think I'll just lower my expectations a bit. I don't know, it just sounds really interesting. Some other ones that I don't own are A Dance of Lies by Brittany Arena. This one sounds just so cool. I honestly don't even know much about it. I just know it involves a dancer who is hired as a spy for her king, and just the cover. The cover got me. Like, if I'm gonna be honest, it's the cover. I'm just very excited for it because it's pretty. And then the last one is A Harvest of Hearts by Andrea Eames, and this has been compared to Howl's Moving Castle, and I love Howl's Moving Castle, so I feel like if I can read a different type of book that reminds me of that, I will enjoy it. I don't know if or when I'll get my hands on these books. I definitely need to prioritize the books that are on these shelves here, but I would like to get to those at some point this year. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the biggest surprises of the year for me. So I have 3, and it doesn't really matter like which one comes first because they all did surprise me in different ways. The first one is The Floating World by Axie O. This is a young adult fantasy that came out this year, and I had gotten the ARC of it from NetGalley, and it was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. I didn't really know what to expect from it, but just from the synopsis it reminded me a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I can say it is somewhat similar to that. Not exactly, but just kind of the world. It's like an Asian inspired fantasy world. There's basically, if you can't tell, a floating world, and for some reason it just reminded me of like the Earth Kingdom in Avatar: The Last Airbender and all the different elemental factions and stuff. There's no elemental magic in here, but it was just really interesting, and we had characters that reminded me of the protagonists in Avatar. And they were just so lovable, and even though they were teenagers and there was a lot of dark stuff going on in this world and just scary stuff that they had to deal with, their connection to each other and just their bond was just so lighthearted and very just heartwarming, and I just loved how they were written. So I just feel like it's a very wholesome series, even though the events in this aren't super wholesome. I was just very surprised by this, and I really enjoyed it. So I recommend it if you like Avatar: The Last Airbender, or if you like Tangled. There are similarities to Tangled in this, which I also loved, as well as Arcane. It did remind me a bit of Arcane because it's not exactly super steampunky, but it kind of has that divide between the different cities and like the overworld and the underworld, which is reminiscent of Arcane. And then the next one on this list is Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I picked this up for an audiobook during the Magical Readathon, and I was thoroughly surprised by this. I'd seen a lot of people say like okay things about it. I feel like people either really liked this one or they weren't the biggest fan of it. I've read her other series, the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and that one is just a favorite of mine. It's so nostalgic for me, so I just was curious what I would think about this. There were some things I did like about this more than other things. I think she's great at writing food descriptions and clothing descriptions. I just really admire her writing. It seems very well thought out and very detailed while still being kind of easy to digest. I did find the main character kind of annoying, so it's not like a perfect book by any means to me, but I was just surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I just didn't really have high hopes for this. It had been on my TBR so long, so I just kind of wanted to get it over with. So I'm not sure if I'll continue this series, but it's definitely an option. I think overall it was just a good book. Now comes the fun part where we get to talk about my biggest disappointments of the year. So thankfully I didn't have too many bad books this year so far. Like I said, I'm trying to prioritize the quality over the quantity, so I won't have this happen again. These were ones that I had seen great things about or I was very excited to read, and I was incredibly let down and disappointed. So forgive me for my opinions. They are my own, and everyone has their own taste. I just did not like these books very much, so I'm gonna try to remain calm. So the first is Guild by Raven Kennedy. I had heard so many good things about this series, that it was compared to Throne of Glass, and it was such a good like character arc for this main character with great world building and romance. But this book was just horrible. It was so bad. I read this for the Magical Readathon as well, and I will admit, I read it quickly. The writing style is very easy. it just was not good. The main character is so frustrating and insufferable, and I just could not stand her. The male characters in this are disgusting. It was so painful to read the comments they would make about women, and just everything they would say, everything that came out of their mouth, I would just ignore because it was so vile. And also there was just no plot to this. Nothing happened. We were just watching her be imprisoned and tortured the entire book, and I always hear people say, oh, just wait till you get to the next couple books. You know, it gets so much better, the romance gets better. But I don't want to read another book or two about her being abused. Like, no offense, I just don't want to read that. And so for people to compare this to Throne of Glass in the same way that people say, wait till you get in a couple books to Throne of Glass and you'll really get into it, this is not the same thing. When they say that about Throne of Glass, they do not mean the same thing as Guild. Because with Throne of Glass, at least in the first couple books, there was action, there was trials, there were things going on that even if it wasn't the most exciting thing, you were still entertained and there was still a plot. For this, there was absolutely no plot, and there was a big plot twist that happened in the middle of this book, and it just felt like one big long prequel. And I've seen people say that and they like this book, but for me, I feel like just don't write it. You know what I mean? Hello, editing Nora here to clarify some things because I did not make sense here and I want to explain myself. What I was trying to say here is that because people compare this to Throne of Glass, I expected us to get into the action really quickly and get a lot of the character backstory like as we read, but what happened is the first book, Guild, just felt like one big long backstory, and so I feel like what this author could have done instead is pick up where the main character is in the midst of the action and her life has already changed. I just felt like seeing her life change was moving so slowly, there was no direction, nothing happened, and so at least I feel like with Throne of Glass, with Selena, we got her backstory as her main present-day plotline unfolded, so we got to see the parallels between her past and her present and kind of what that meant for her character development. But with Guild, it felt like we were just starting at the very beginning and it just felt really unnecessary and it just made it feel slower. And I also didn't care about the main character of Guild, so I didn't really want to get her entire backstory before I got to the good part of her present day. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you. So this was a letdown. I love to hate on this book. I did give it 2 stars, so I don't know. The fantasy world was just okay to me. It was just more romance with a fantasy setting than a fantasy book with like a romance plot, so I do not recommend this book. And then the next one might get on people's nerves, but I don't really care because, again, it's my opinion, but it is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This was just a waste of time. We read like, how many pages is this? Like 500 pages just for the last 100 to be eventful, and we're left on a massive cliffhanger that came out of nowhere that makes no sense because there was no build up for the plot twist to make sense, if that makes sense. And I just feel like the side quests in this and just the dragging out of it all was just so, it just felt like filler and it felt unnecessary. And I feel like if this were still supposed to be a trilogy, it would be a favorite trilogy of mine. But because it's been expanded onto 5 books for basically a cash grab, a money grab, and I know that's really not the author's fault, but it just felt so rushed and just so like last minute, you know what I mean? So I'm not really sure if I'll continue this series. Like, part of me wants to know what happens, but the other part of me will probably just reread Fourth Wing to feel something and then forget the next 2 books exist. Like, I'll probably just treat Fourth Wing as a standalone because truly the events that come after this have been so bad to me. I did not like Iron Flame. I did not like this one. So I just really don't think this series is for me anymore. It was just really disappointing. And I'm sad because it's popular. And I'm just slowly realizing that I don't like the popular stuff. And that's okay. I don't have to. You don't have to read books that everyone else reads because it's okay to have different tastes. But yeah, that was a bummer. And then the last one on this list is The Gods Time Forgot by Kelsey Sheridan Gonzalez, and I read this on my trip to Germany. I just needed another ebook to read, and this kind of was pitched to me as like Outlander-ish, which is like a historical fantasy vibe, and I was really into it at the first little bit, but it just was so all over the place. I feel like the characters weren't really developed. The romance felt a bit rushed too, and I felt like I just couldn't really get into the story. It felt like the magical plot and the fantasy plot was added on at the last second, and so we were wrapping up things very quickly, and I didn't get the answers I wanted. So we got a lot of historical aspects in this, but the fantasy just didn't hit it for me. Okay, the next question is a new to you favorite author. So I have 4 actually, because I have read a lot of great books this year, and a lot of them have been from different authors, which I'm proud of because I want to try and read new authors and try different stories. So the first one is obviously Rachel Gillig, who wrote One Dark Window. I loved her writing style, and I absolutely cannot wait to read more of her books. I have The Night and the Moth, and I just haven't gotten to it yet, but just her writing is just so atmospheric and spooky, and I love it. The next one, which I did already talk about, is Pierce Brown, who wrote Red Rising. And I don't know, I just really connected with his characters. I feel like he has a great mixture of plot and characters, so you saw the characters develop as the plot developed, and I just feel like his writing style is very like linear. Like, it's not the most descriptive thing ever, but it still really meshed with me, and I just like kind of the high stakes tone he writes in. And then we have Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo at the beginning of this year, and I loved it. I read Malibu Rising, so I guess she isn't that new to me, but this was her first like really popular book I read by her, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm excited to read the rest of her books, especially Daisy Jones and the Six. I don't know why, just her like historical fiction tone with all the drama and the history. Oh, it's just so good. And then we have Madeline Miller. I read The Song of Achilles earlier this year for the Magical Readathon, and I absolutely loved it. It was really, really good. I felt like it was slow at times, but her writing style really makes up for it. She's very knowledgeable, and you can just tell she's a very smart woman from the way she writes, and she takes so much time and effort to make it historically accurate, and it makes me really excited to read Circe because I just can't get enough. I need to be in her head again. I just love her. She's great. The next question is the most beautiful books that you've bought. So I'm just gonna count these 2, which are my Fairy Loot editions that I treated myself to this year. Also, sorry if you can hear my cat. It's The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. The stunning, beautiful book, and there's more, but I just have to show you this first. And then This Monster of Mine by Shalini Abesekara. I'm so sorry, but again, it's just absolutely beautiful. These are definitely the prettiest books I own, and I think they were worth it just from trying Fairy Loot for a couple months. I love it so far. I probably won't keep doing it because it's not really sustainable for my bank account, but it's really nice to have just some special editions, and I haven't read these yet, but I'm really hoping I love these, and I just feel like they're so pretty to display on my shelves. And then we have A Book That Made You Cry, and I feel like this one is kind of obvious because everyone probably has this on their list for this question, but it's Sunrise on the Reading by Suzanne Collins. Obviously, I sobbed at this, especially at the beginning. I did think I would sob at the end, but I was more just like gutted. I just couldn't, I was like numb. I couldn't cry because I was like, what just happened? But at the beginning, I was just so distraught. And oh my gosh, I felt so many emotions during this book. Normally I never cry at books, but this one just, oh my gosh, it's just heartbreaking. That's all I'll say. And for some books that made me happy to lighten the mood a bit, I read Soul Match by Rebecca Dansenbaker, which comes out later this month in July, and I got this as an ARC from That Galley as well. This one was just so reminiscent of young adult dystopian from like the 2010s, but it was a bit like more modern, if that makes sense. So it had the feelings of the Maze Runner with like the found family and everything, sort of Hunger Games, but like not as dark in my opinion, not as like impactful in my opinion. But it was just a really fun time, and I think the world building was really well done. I can tell the author put a lot of time into this story. So the characters felt a bit juvenile to me because it is young adult, but I just loved it. Like truly, I didn't mind it by the end because I felt so connected to them and they felt so real. I also loved the setup of the dystopian elements. It's very similar to our world today, but it's just a bit more futuristic. The premise of this is that every person has like past souls, like past lives. So when you turn 18, you go to this institute to tell you what your past lives were, but depending on what that was, it determines your job, your soulmate, if you go to prison, your bank account, your financials, everything. So it's really scary, and it just presented a lot of moral issues that I think weren't expanded on as much as I would have wanted them to be, and that's okay because it was a YA book and it is a standalone, so I don't expect the author to really go into it, but I just wanted more of that. And so even though I didn't get all those kind of moral issue debates that I was looking for, it was still really, really good and really, really interesting, and it just made me happy. I just loved that book so much. And then the other one was Watership Down, the graphic novel by James Sturm. I was so connected to the bunnies and their crazy lives and just how they were moving from place to place, and I was just so on edge the whole time. I was so immersed in it, and it was just so cute. I just loved them so much, and now I need to read the actual book so badly. I need more of them, but I definitely see myself rereading the graphic novel. It was so good. Now for some books I need to read by the end of the year. Honestly, I could say every book that I own that I haven't read yet for this question, but I'm going to limit it to 3 because there are 3 like top priorities that I really want to get to soon. So the first one that someone throttle me. Like, someone shake me and punch me and just do anything to get me to read this because I keep putting it off. But it's Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I can't believe I haven't read this yet. I love Six of Crows so much, and I just need to finish this series, but I think I'm holding on because I don't want it to end. And also, I just don't really remember what happened to Six of Crows, so I'd like to refresh my memory and reread that if I can. But I just don't want it to end. This is such a good series and such a well developed and written series that I just don't want to say goodbye to it. And I also just don't want to cry because I've heard it's sad, but I need to read this. And then the next one is a series that I would like to start, and that is The Infernal Devices. So this is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. I read the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series last year, and I enjoyed them. Obviously they're not the best, they were a bit weird, but they were really good, and I just love the Shadowhunters world as it was growing so far. So I want to expand on that and continue with this series. I'm doing that reading order that tells you to read this after that, I think. I don't know what it's called. But I'm just really intrigued by this because so many people say it's their favorite, and I just want to know why. I think the Victorian England setting is going to be really, really good and really interesting, and I think there's a love triangle, and that just has me curious. So I'm actually dying to start this. I wish I could right now. And then the next one, I'm not sure if I'll get to, but I would like to if I can. It's Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is a classic, obviously, but I just think I will love this book. I will love to talk about girlhood and family and just, oh my gosh, I surely don't know what to say about this book because the movie is one of my favorites of all time, and I just need to know more, and I need to fully be connected to these characters because I just love the March family so much. And I don't really read classics too often, but I'm trying to get better about reading them more because I always think they're for school, but what's stopping me from reading them for fun, you know what I mean? I just need to separate the two in my mind, and I think this would be a perfect one to do because I don't think it'll read super difficult. Like, I feel like other ones, like a Jane Austen book, might be hard to get into, but I feel like this one will be okay. So I'm crossing my fingers that I can get to it. We'll see. And then as for some books that I like to reread, I have Harry Potter. I shouldn't be rereading these because I need to read the books that I haven't read yet, but if I were to pick a reread, it's going to be this, and I do have the audiobook that I'm going to start, but I always get up to the first 3 books in the Harry Potter series before I just ditch my reread because they get so big and so dense. But I just need to know more of the details. I always forget the differences between the books and the movies, so I'd like to really get back into these stories and just remember how the characters are, like truly are in these books. And I always want to be back at Hogwarts, so why wouldn't I reread these, you know? And then, like I said earlier, if I can, I'd like to reread Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo to prepare for Crooked Kingdom. but that's not necessary. I could just read a summary or something, which honestly I might do that, but I feel like it'll be nice to build up the momentum again and then go straight into Crooked Kingdom. But it's okay if I can't, but if I have the time I would like to, because I miss this story. I miss these characters, and I was just so obsessed with it when I first read it, if you can't tell by the tabs. But I just miss it so much, and there's so many scenes that I dog-eared that I want to go back to. So I feel like I could benefit from a reread. And then I'm also slowly rereading a couple Throne of Glass books. I'm currently re-listening to Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas, and I will re-listen to Queen of Shadows because I left off on the tandem read and I want to be fully caught up before I commit to that big endeavor. The next question is, how many 5-stars do you have this year? And I don't think I have too many. I'm very stingy with my 5-star reads because I have to have that feeling. And it doesn't matter if the writing's great. It doesn't matter if the book is objectively good. If I don't feel connected, if I don't feel it, it's not going to be 5 stars. It'll just be like 4, 4.5. So I'm extremely stingy with my 5 stars. So far I have 4 5-star reads, which out of the 36 I've read, I feel like that's not very good. I feel like majority of the books I've read are 3 stars, like I said earlier. And, you know, 3 stars doesn't mean it's a bad book. For me, that's just like, it was good. I enjoyed it. Nothing to write home about, but it was still a decent time. Like, I still enjoyed my time reading it, and it was an okay story, but I feel like I just need to pick up books that I have that feeling I will love, or just the premise sounds like me. The next question is a book you enjoyed with mixed reviews, and I already talked about this, but I feel like the one that fits it most is Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I just think this one is kind of underrated, or the books further in this series are the ones that are most beloved by other readers, and this one I really love. So I haven't read the other 2 yet, so I don't have an opinion on those yet, but I just really enjoyed this one. I feel like the world was very unique, and it was nice to read about like Italian culture mixed with like the witchcraft and the fantasy in this. I just feel like I'm seeing a lot of books that are like American culture with witchcraft, so it was cool to see a different type of witchcraft in this fantasy world. But I just thought it was different and exciting, and you know, it wasn't my favorite, but I still think I liked it more than most people do. I'm not really sure what the consensus is, but I feel like most people just think this is okay, but they love the rest of the books in this series. So I guess I'll have to read them and see what I think. And now we get into the exciting part, which is talking about books I'm excited for the rest of the year. I have a lot of anticipated releases for July onwards through December, but I just have a couple that I'm going to highlight real quick. So the first one is The Dance of Lies by Brittany Arena. I'm really excited for that one. It just sounds like such a good premise, and I'm also getting the Fairy Loot edition of that, so I will definitely unbox that when I get it. A sequel to The Floating World, which is The Demon and the Light by Axio. I'm excited to see the wrap-up to the series because it's a duology, so I'm very, very excited to read that, and I have the art copy, so I should definitely get on that. And then another one that I just randomly stumbled upon that looked good was called The Book of Heartbreak by Ova Sarin. It's been compared to, I think, Heavenly Bodies, which I really, really love that book, and I'm just kind of curious about it. I don't really know much, but the cover's pretty, so that always helps, and that convinces me. Another art copy that I have that I need to get to is The Weaver Bride by Lydia Gregovic. This premise sounds interesting. I think it follows a witch of sorts, and I think there's some trials and some games, and it kind of is reminiscent of The Selection to me, and I never read that series, but it kind of has like a royal court with like some type of matchmaking thing. I could be completely wrong about that, but this one just sounds good, so I'm glad I have the arc of that to get to. One that comes out soon that I'm kind of itching to get my hands on is another one that involves mermaids, or I think it's a siren, but any book that has a mermaid or siren, like, sign me up. I'm into it. But it's In the Veins of the Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy. I truly, besides the mermaids, have no idea what this is about, but it looks cool, the cover's pretty, and I've seen a lot of like hype around it, so I'm wary, but I'm still excited. And then we have a new release by Holly Jackson, Not Quite Dead Yet, which is, I think, her first adult like mystery thriller, which is really exciting. I love the Good Girls Guide to Murder series. I've read 2 out of 3 of those books, and I haven't read her other one, which I'm blanking on the title, but I'm definitely going to pick this up sometime because I just read her books so quickly and she's just such a great writer. And then we have two of my most anticipated releases, which I'm literally counting down the days toward, and I have my pre-orders ready to go. But the first one is Fallen Stars by Imani Ariu, which is the sequel to Heavenly Bodies, and Heavenly Bodies was probably my favorite book of 2024. I loved it so much. I read the self-published copy before it got republished, so I kind of want to get a like trad published copy to reread, but we'll have to see. But I'm just so excited to pick up where we left off and see what happens. I'm scared though. And then we have a new Laini Taylor. Well, technically not new Laini Taylor, but like a republished Laini Taylor. So it's The Guardians of Dream Dark Wind Witch, which I have, if you can't see up here, her like very first books, which are Blackbringer and Silksinger, which kind of take place in the world of Dreamdark, and it's just being republished, and I'm very, very excited. I feel like I want to read these two first to compare the two, but either way, I'm getting my hands on that Laini Taylor in any way that I can. So the last question of this tag is 5-star predictions for the rest of the year, and truly I have so many that sharing them with you would just take so long. So I could throw some out there. I don't know, maybe A Dance of Lies, Night in the Moth, Crooked Kingdom. There's so many that I can't really choose. I can't really choose like just a couple. But if you want to see any of my 5 stars that I might eventually read, make sure to check out my other videos. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I'm sorry it was kind of like speedrunny. I feel like I went through it all very rapid fire, but I just feel like I ramble on a lot, so I don't want to do that with the same like 5 books, you know? But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed, and definitely keep an eye out for my other ones coming soon. Bye!